Well, welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is my Lotus Elan Sprint. Mine actually dates from 1973. It was probably built in 1972, but most of them date from 71 or 72, and that is 50 years ago now. I find that absolutely staggering. I think the shape has sort of aged beautifully. I actually bought this one in 1993, so 30 years ago nearly. And this Lotus Elan, this hero of Colin Chapman, how you could turn a 1600cc car that was basically a giant killer. So it was always a dream car I wanted to own. I actually owned one before this. We'll go into details in a moment. But I just thought I'd dig out a road test. This is Motorsport's road test of the Lotus Elan Sprint, just to put this car in context when it came out. Naturally, the Elan Sprint will win just about any traffic light Grand Prix. And Lotus claim a 0 to 60 time of 6.2 seconds, which is faster than any other car currently available. A Lamborghini Miura's time is around 6.7 seconds, while a good E-Type will record 7.4 seconds. Just think of that. This little Lotus Elan Sprint, faster than an E-Type, faster than a Lamborghini Miura to 60 miles an hour. Let's go and have a closer look. Now, as I mentioned, I had owned another Elan before I bought this one in 93. It was 1985, and I then did sprints and hill climbs, a lot of those during the late 80s and early 90s, and the car got quicker, but it made it less of a road car as I continued up the thing. I think 92 was my best season. I think I had some ridiculous figure like 21 wins from 23 starts. There's a photograph of me looking very skinny and lots of things on the bonnet of my red Elan. And I just thought I really wanted a road Elan. I'd taken it almost too far down the motorsport route. It still had an MOT and road registered, but it wasn't particularly pleasant on road. And then this one came for sale, and it did not look like this at all. This was a restoration project that had just sort of stalled, as they often do. And I basically bought a car, the bits, the body, the new chassis, engine rebuilt, but nothing else, no interior, nothing. And it all needed bolted together again for £4,000 in September 93. And I spent the winter sort of preparing the body for paint. It then went to chap Mick Miller, who was the person to get your the Lotus Elan resprayed out in Suffolk. And it came back, I think, in 95, early 95, absolutely perfect. I then built it up, put the interior in, etc. And that is the car you see before you now, and my aim was to make the most perfect road-going Lotus Elan. So I have done little tweaks that I'd learnt in my previous 8 years of owning a Lotus Elan that I'll go through now. Now, just some of the things on these little Lotuses. Extraordinary how they sort of look the right size in proportion when you just photograph them on their own, but put it next to any other road car, especially today, and it is tiny. It is 4'8" wide. That is its real killer on B roads and stuff. It is so narrow, and yet it packs a sort of normal space when you're behind this in the seats in the cockpit. It doesn't feel cramped at all. In fact, there are 2 seat positions on this car. I'm at 6'2". I actually am on the forward seat position, the rearmost on the forward position. If I was taller, if I'm Gordon Murray or someone, well, he has it on the back seat position. So if you're 6'4", 6'5", you will still fit into this car. The other bit I can never get over with the car is the size of the wheels. 13-inch wheels, and then the tyres, 155 section tyres. If I just pull that out, I can remember John Barker remarking at Evo that this would just be the size of a space saver, but here it is on this super sports car with this renowned reputation for handling and grip and speed, and it's on 155 section tyres. Now the trick on the handling is all Colin Chapman. I'm just going to take the bonnet off. Now, a weird trick with the Elan, you pop the bonnet up like that, and there's a big spring at the front that I can take off And I can take the bonnet off. That is a typical Colin Chapman trick. Here is the engine, this beautiful 1600 twin cam, basically Ford block Lotus head. Look at the position of it. Look where the front wheels are. They're there. That is the line. I can see it here. I can see the chassis. Even though this tiny car is about 12 foot long, the engine is behind the front wheels, and that's all to do with handling. And so when you actually are sitting in the car, it's one of those cars that has much more weight on the rear wheels than the front. That is pure Lotus. I think just look at this engine here. You can tell a Sprint, they have these sort of ribbed cam covers. That was actually to strengthen them because they are renowned for oil leaks along here. That's why they're there. This car is actually on Delautos. They also came on Webers as well. Not very tidy on there. Basically, I've just since I finished this car in '95, I've just driven this car. Hasn't really been touched. I used any purists, as I say, this isn't a perfect Concorde type of car. This is a S3 radiator, so it's a wider radiator because the Lotus was basically not making a lot of money in the late 70s, and they did everything to save money. And one of the things was to shrink the radiator, which is an odd move. Now, I also love the pop-up lights. These work on vacuum, and I think it's one of those rare cars that looks just as good with the lights up or down. Another thing about the Elan, it is impossibly light. The whole car, as you see it now, 700 kilos. Think of that. The Alpine A110, this uber lightweight car, everything done to make it the lightest possible little coupe, is 1,124 kilos, I think. Over 400 kilos heavier than this car, nearly half a ton heavier than this little Elan. GT3 or something is twice the weight of this. A big SUV is probably 4 times the weight of this car. And they did it because there's no crash structure basically in this car. What you've got to think of as a body, if you look under here, there's nothing, there's no real bumper, nothing. It's the air cleaner there, the air horns, wiring, lights. This car is basically the bodywork is like, think of it as a fairing on a motorbike. It's to enclose it and make the air rush past the cockpit, and so you don't get muddy and things. Crash protection isn't there, and it's just from a previous age. Have a look inside. One of the things I did on this car, I tried to lift it because this is all normally plastic, all this covering. I did everything in leather and actually had a walnut dash put on it. This is a starter, and we'll come to the gear change in a moment. It is just delightful. All very simple. A little Chapman-esque story. He had originally just had lift-up windows. He had a little tab on here, lift-up windows. American safety police didn't like that because you could cut your head in a crash here. So he had to make wind-up windows. Much to his annoyance, he hadn't left any space to put a winder mechanism on it. So he had to fit electric windows, which are heavy and so un-Lotus, but there was no other solution. Other little improvements I put on it, I put inertia belts on it, etc. Come round the back, these are E-type lenses, you might spot those. You can tell an S4 because it's got a lot longer handle there. And there's a reasonable boot in there as well. I actually keep the soft top in the boot. You can actually keep it under, you're meant to keep it under here, but I find because of the plastic windows, etc., they get creased on here, so I just keep it loosely in the boot like that. I think that's all I can show you on the car itself. I think the design really works. I love the little single central exhaust on it. These aren't bumpers at all, but just looks neat, all looks in proportion and has stood the test of time. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to put the hood up, I think, because it's a wintry day outside. It's only about 3 degrees. And we'll take it out, show you inside, and then take it for a drive. Now, before we start, I thought it's worth just looking at how you get in and out of an Elan, because there's a technique to it. The doors are quite good actually, because they go quite a long way that way, so your feet don't get trapped. But it is quite low, obviously there. In and out is fairly easy. Feet first, and in you go, like that. When you come to get out is the trick. Whatever you do, don't get hold of the header rail up the windscreen to help yourself out. Sort of grab that. That Mr. Chapman only made that strong enough to support the windscreen, not you. You can get hold of the base of the windscreen there as a sort of help you out. I get hold of the sill like that and come out like that. It's much easier than you expect. It's so, if you try Caterham's Elise or MG Midgets, anything like that, they're a right pain. The Elan isn't too bad at all, even though it's sort of that big. Yes, it's snug in here, shall we say, but weirdly civilised, I always think. Yeah, much not stripped out at all. I'm going to actually set off. I'm not going to take you around the dash. There'll be other opportunities to do that in a moment because it's a bit cold. It's about 3 degrees outside. But yeah, I'll run through that then. I just want to get the heater going really. So I'm going to set off from here and you'll be joining me in a moment. And we'll go and find some better roads. I always like it actually with the hood up because the heater works well. You have a little flap under here that you open if you want heat your side, and I close it on the passenger side because there's no one with me, so I can have all the heat. So yeah, you've got individual heating on a Lotus Elan. Not quite as sophisticated when you can just press a button and have 20 degrees and 22 this side, but there you go. I have a fan as well. Yeah, and you can just hear all the squeaks, rattles, etc. Coupes are better. I think for some reason, you know, the soft tops like this, there's always a few extra rattles. There's one behind me, I'll never be able to discover quite what it is. It might be in the inertia belt, I'm not sure. I like this little car because it's all to scale. It's tiny, but I don't feel as though I'm in a tiny car inside, weirdly. Great visibility out, nicely laid out dash. They come as standard with a plywood sort of dash. I went, when I did the rebuild, I put a walnut dash in just to give it a bit more, a nicer feel inside. And you get these rocker switches here. And you should have sort of lettering on it, but it upsets me, the lettering. I don't need the lettering. I've owned this car for 30 years and I know which one does what. And I've also got the most wonderful gear change that I'll come on in a moment. Look how close it is to the wheel. It is just there. And having built this car, that is directly into the gearbox. The gearbox sits under there. There is no springing, no nothing. That is directly into the cogs where it just moves some sort of shifters, and then the cogs are just below it. And it is the most glorious change, as we'll see when we start doing some gear changes in a moment. The only advantage of the super lightweight is just when you're drifting around like this. I'm in third, 1800 revs on the engine. It's only 1558cc this engine, but with only 700 kilos to move, it still accelerates quite nicely as soon as you touch the throttle. Right, here's my delimit sign. I'm going to keep it in third, I think, just to give you a sense of what it's like. There we are. I'm only revving up to 3, about 4 then, something like that, just while it warms up. But it does get a move on, but you do get quite a lot of wind noise. Hoping you can hear me, but you get this super direct feel of the steering. But just the whole car buzzes with energy as soon as you get going. And it's always revving. There's no fifth gear, there's only 4-speed gearbox. So what's 60 if I get it to 60 again? 60 is 3,100 or thereabouts. I actually, when I rebuilt the car, I put the longest diff as a turbine, the ratio, to try and make 4 for sort of cruising gear. And it works okay, but it's still busy. But the engine is as smooth as you like, and really doesn't seem to mind being sitting at 3,500, 4,000 RPM on a motorway all day long, no problem at all. I'm just going to take you through the gears, just pull away from here. It's a racing start, that wouldn't be quite fitting on a 50-year-old car. And issue was September 2003, and we were amazed at the numbers it did. I think it was 6.8 seconds to 60, but 16.3 seconds to 100 miles an hour. That was nearly 10 seconds quicker than the Mazda MX-5 we also had at the same test. So yeah, even today it really does get a move on, and it just loves a road like this. You know, it does help some of the things I've done. I've mounted the steering column with solid mounts rather than rubber mounts. I've had it all corner weighted. It's on adjustable spring platforms, so I can adjust that. It's slightly higher spring rates at the front, because I have it run it about 15mm lower than standard. All of it, I want to be able to make it usable. I did not want to turn it into a track car. I basically wanted to blueprint it. Sort of wanted to make it sort of press car spec, shall we say. Back in the day, I think Lotus made absolutely sure their press cars handled and went very well. Lovely brake pedal as well, absolutely solid. It is so greasy and horrid out there, but you sort of know what's going on in this thing. Delicacy. It's making a Elan flow. A very successful Elan racer said to me the trick with an Elan is always go into the corners a gear higher, and it's so true. If you want to be quick in an Elan, don't think you have to buzz it and drive it aggressively. It's stroking it through the curves. Jim Clark style is what you have to adopt with an Elan. It's obvious, you know, it's obvious that when you drive it and you've driven it, I've been very lucky having 40 odd years driving Elans. It's absolutely right. So Jim Clark School of Motoring, Jackie Stewart, not the Villeneuve or a Lacey. That wouldn't work at all in an Elan. And it's because of that tiny footprint. You're just caressing either side of where the grip is. You don't muscle it. Although I have to say traction, apart from a day like this, is really good because of the amount of weight in the back. But on corners like this, when you're only 4'8" wide, I can sort of straight line corners that another car will be happy to make turns into the corners. Not on this, it's like being on a bike. You've got much more road to play with because you get that big. The brakes, really solid pedal, beautiful for heel and towing. Third into here. Good try second. Here we are. Even there, full power out there in these terrible conditions. Brilliant, brilliant chassis. Just amazing. That's the famous gear sizzle. It's also got lots of suspension travel, so the bumps aren't putting it off in stroke at all. Yeah, gives you a little sense of the magic of the Lotus Elan Sprint. Listen to it. I'm only using like 4,500 then. Yeah, a little summary then. I suppose I ought to just do some dislikes, and I suppose it's just the it's a little fragile. I have to always sort of look around it. I've never had anything really big go wrong. You just are aware that, you know, switches might fall into the dash, or the wipers might decide to pack up, that sort of thing. But I found the engine absolutely fine. I've never touched it since the rebuild. Touched lots of wood. We had a gearbox, got stuck in a ratio one time, I had to have that rebuilt. That's it. And just, it wasn't built by Porsche, you know, so the shut lines aren't particularly good, and we and the bonnet needs an extra dunk to try and get it to catch. Just not Germanic quality. Unfortunately, it's sort of Lotus quality, and it was an expensive car actually, new. You could buy, this was 2,140 I think on the road new in 72. Put that in perspective, Triumph TR6 was about £1,460 and an E-Type was £620 more, that's 2,700. But you know, Alpha GTVs etc, they were 1,500, a lot cheaper than this. What they did to get around it was you bought it in kit form, so you got around the purchase tax, and that meant that quite a lot of their majority were built by their owners, which didn't give them the best reputation, should we say, back in the day. 50 years on, we've got them pretty sorted, part supply is good, so it's good to know. But the lights were one, the sheer amount of performance available, still shocking today. And down a road like this, it is exemplary. You need a GR Yaris to keep up with this thing down here, even in these rubbish conditions of today. Two, the gear change. It just doesn't get better than that. You are straight in the gearbox. What's unusual with it, there's no detemp gene first, second and third, fourth. You just bring it across, never miss a gear. You can do a racing change. I've never ever selected the wrong gear. It just doesn't happen. And it's just this little distance away from the wheel. So the purity of the drive is what gets me. That's why I've enjoyed it. I guess that's why I've owned it 30 years. There is nothing like a fully sorted Lotus Elan. And I also think it's really pretty. So there you go. 50 years on, I can understand why they're still sought after. On the road. Just how it eats that thumb. It's sort of made for real roads. I sort of prefer it to my racer, because it is just giant killing down this sort of road, and I see it in the garage and I use it during the winter. Fiberglass body, I spray everything with that ACF 50, all the mechanicals, all tip top, so all the bolts undo easily if I had to do that. But that's my summary. I hope that's given you a better idea why I still own this car after 30 odd years, why Lotus Elan Sprints are still the sort of model in the Lotus range and an iconic Lotus from the past, common champion genius. And if you have enjoyed this video, well, keep watching, keep subscribing, more videos coming along very soon. Thanks for watching.